Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. Doug again. I got a big stack of things to show you from the last little while. First off, I got a bit of an announcement to make. Um, First of all, just let me say I'm really blown away by the response to these videos and my channel. I started this, I thought maybe like a handful of people would be watching, and now it's within like striking distance of 100 subscribers. Just gobsmacked by that. But lately I've kind of been having the urge to do something else as well. I'm still going to be making the videos, of course, but I've started a blog page kind of as an extension or companion to these videos, where I can maybe go into a bit more detail, show new pickups as they come in, maybe write a little bit. I used to kind of do that for fun, and been on the back burner for years and years. So I've just really been feeling the need to do something like that. So I started a blog page, and when I started my video channel, I thought I'd just do it under my own name. There was a few people in the BC I saw that I admired their channels that are just doing it under their own name. Matt Sands, James, Paige Martin, people like that. So, and I'd been on a reggae community for years with one of those like handle names, and just kind of felt kind of silly after a while. So I just thought I'd do this channel under my own name. But for an actual blog page, I thought I needed something a little catchier. So I called it Fat City Vinyl and Music Blog, which is just sort of a name I had in mind for a while. It's from a Mandrill song. And yeah, it's a Facebook page. I'll put a link down below. Check it out and hit the like, I guess, if you like what you see. It's basically something I'm doing for myself that I feel like I want to do, but I hope there's something there for everybody. That's kind of the point of it all. I was kind of experimenting with a couple of different sites or platforms, trying to figure out what the kind of the right vehicle for what I wanted to do was. And yeah, in the end I just kind of created a Facebook page. Not kind of 100% of a fan of the visual look or layout or what have you, but for accessibility and convenience, I feel it's kind of a good place to start off anyway. So check that out. As I said, I will leave a link to it before. I'll be showing like a mix of kind of new finds as they come in, and just maybe little reviews, or maybe reviews isn't even kind of the right word, but like features. Might have some short ones and a few longer posts. Just kind of whatever I'm feeling at the moment. It can be a bit of a challenge, kind of find a block of time to sit down and make a video, whereas it's a little bit easier just to throw something on a blog page. So, but videos will still continue. No changes there that I foresee at this point in time. So that's that. Now on to some finds. First off, a couple of thrift finds. Certain Mr. Jobim, Antonio Carlos that is. It's on the UK Pickwick label. I think this is like an 80s pressing, 60s album. Dark blue label there. A nice bossa there. Stopped in at one thrift store that I rarely ever find anything. It's like the absolute dregs of the dregs there, like cheesy like religious records and stuff like that. And I found, one day I came in and found this one, Dave Grusin, Discovered Again. This is from 1976, I think it is. It's on the Sheffield Lab label. It's a direct-to-disc mastered. It's in really nice shape, well cared for, and it's got Keep Your Eye on the Sparrow, which is the theme song from Beretta, the 70s TV cop show. It's kind of funky. He composed that. There's a few different versions of it, I think. And a couple other kind of funky tunes on there too. Some cool jazz fusion. Ron Carter on bass there. And a couple of record store finds. Odia Coates. This was something of a blind buy. This is on United Artists. She worked with Paul Anka, kind of a soul. She's kind of a soul singer. Started out in the church, as many did, and kind of co-produced, did some duets with Paul Anka. That was a lot of her big hits, which kind of leads you to believe it's going to be kind of a cheese fest. But it's recorded at Fame Studios, Muscle Shoals, with Rick Hall and the Fame Gang, keeping it on the funky tip. And there's a couple of grittier, upbeat tunes on there. Very nice. She only did like 1 or 2 albums and passed away from breast cancer. Very sad. Another one I picked up, Curtis Mayfield live. See that? Never saw that one in the wild before, so I was glad to snag that one. Classic Curtis. And in the live setting, you really get how funky his band is. That doesn't really necessarily always come across in his studio recordings. I have a buddy who's looking to downsize a few of his records, so I snagged a few from him. First off, I got Ocho. That's on Universal Sound. And Ocho 2. The first one is a kind of a compilation, and this is a straight reissue of their second album. This is kind of early 70s Latin jazz, soul, just some killer smoking Latin grooves on there. Deadly stuff. And he had a bit of reggae as well, because he is a reggae collector. Hey Mark. Original 10-inch single on Music Works. This is from the early 80s. This is Pass the Coochie, Mighty Diamonds. If you know that Musical Youth song, Pass the Dutchie, this is the original version of it. Musical Youth kind of sanitized the original lyrics. And it's based on a Studio One rhythm from the 60s called Full Up. That's the original version of it. I got a 12-inch single on the Joe Gibbs label from him. Classic Joe Gibbs disco sleeve jacket there. It's Barrington Levy, My Woman, with Kojak and Liza holding down the DJ version, 10,000 Gal. I had this already, but this is an upgrade copy. And this was such a crucial tune, he basically pressed it in my hands and said I wasn't leaving without it. Rose Melody, Now I'm Alone. This is on Burning Rockers label out of the UK. Red vinyl. It's kind of a lover's rock tune. It's not great, let's put it that way. But it's alright. The rhythm is okay. And I got from him Rod Taylor, Where's Your Love, Mankind? Rod Taylor, a singer who came out of the Greenwich Farm area of Kingston, Jamaica. This recorded for the Freedom Sounds label. This album is from 1980, produced by Henry Junjo Laws, mixed at King Tubby's by Scientist, and Roots Radix, of course, on here. This is original. This is another one I had on reissue. Junjo was just firing on all cylinders in those early years of the 80s and just cranking out albums like that. All excellent. And lastly, from my friend, I got Errol Scorcher, Roachin' at a Corner. This is a reissue on his own Scorcher label. This is from 1980, I think. This was kind of his biggest hit. He was kind of one of those late 70s, early 80s DJs. Roachin' at a Corner was on the Real Rock rhythm, and also another Studio One track, versioned many, many times in reggae. And you might know it from William Williams' Armageddon Time, which was covered by The Clash. The same kind of basic rhythm track was used over and over again for that one. Okay, on to some mail order finds. A bunch of the Fela Kuti albums have been reissued on Knitting Factory label. They're available on his... they've set up a website called regulartrademark.fela.net, I think, or you can find them at various retailers. Pretty inexpensive. Apparently they're the first authorized vinyl reissues. They're aiming to put his entire catalog back in print. So a bunch of them have come out already, and there's apparently another group coming out later this year. So I got Live with Ginger Baker. And these all come with a download code first of all, and individual liner notes, and a poster. This is cool. I want this on my wall. And I got Confusion. Only thing with these is the art's kind of I don't know if it's not reproduced very well, or if that's the way the originals looked. I've never seen one, so I can't really judge that way. Looks kind of not very sharply defined, or whatever you'd want to call it. He misrode, but music sounds great. Excellent records. I've never delved into his music too much. Probably he's pretty well known in the BC, so I won't say too much. Sorrow, Tears and Blood. Excellent Afrobeat. And I had one more also, earlier one. Fela Ransom Kuti and his Kula Lobatos. This is on Clint label. This is earlier 60s recordings with his earlier version of his band. More in the high life style than the Afrobeat that came later, I guess. Okay, a few more mail order finds. On the Brazilian tip, Jose Pratas, Tam Tam Tam. I think John K. Techhead tipped me off to this one. This is a really rare album from like the 1950s that got reissued on Trunk Records. And just killer Latin grooves on here. Some of the vocals are kind of a little bit old-fashioned in that kind of 1950s style, but that's not too prominent. And just the instrumentals are just killer. Just smoking grooves there. Few more mail order ones. 10-inch single on Raka Shaka. This is a reissue out of Japan. There's all kinds of these things out here. Usually they're pretty expensive, the Japan reissues, but they're very high quality, and this one was actually pretty reasonable. This is Sam Carty, Milta He Anken, better known as Bird in Hand, which is a tune that appeared on the Return of the Super Ape album, I think, and it's just a really weird, trippy Black Ark tune, which some reggae scholars kind of found out a few years ago that it was based on a Bollywood tune from some movie that had been shown in Jamaica in the 1950s, and this kind of fairly obscure singer, Sam Carty, decided to kind of reproduce an attempt at that song in his version of Hindi. Very trippy. Reggae Archive label. Midlands Roots Explosion. This is kind of an offshoot of the Bristol Archive label, which put out a lot of crucial, kind of rare and unreleased reggae from Bristol, England. Now they've kind of widened their mandate a bit and sharing some more regional stuff that either was unreleased or is just really obscure. This has got all kinds of stuff on here. These things are just killer releases, every one of them. It's got the very first single by Steel Pulse, which I'd never even heard of, Kabudu Mansada Abuku, instrumental. They've got Musical Youth on here, which if you only know them from Past the Duchy, you won't even recognize them from this tune. Just killer roots. Black Symbol on here, Capital Letters, some other more obscure performers, but just 100% deep roots music. Another reissue, Errol Flabba Holt, Rastafari Time. This is a solo album from 1975, very rare record, reissued on Ohm Records, which is a new label. He put out this album as a solo performer, then went on to join the Morwells, which was a band. And after they kind of dissolved, he was one of the founding members of the Roots Radics, which was the key instrumental reggae backing group of the early to mid 80s. Played on that Rod Taylor album I just showed. That's him on bass there. And just countless other records. He's right up there with like Robbie Shakespeare and the great reggae bass players like that. This is strictly roots and culture, as you can probably tell. Kind of redoes a couple of Heptones tunes and rhythms on here. There's a little bit of criticism of the sound quality on this one, but apparently the original didn't sound too terrific either. There's a little bit of pops and a little bit of crackle, I think mainly on side A, which you can tell it's not the vinyl pressing, it's from the source that they've used as the master. Next one, in the 1990s and early 2000s, Blood and Fire was the reggae label that just raised the stakes in the game as far as reggae reissues, just bringing up the level of quality and sound quality, art, liner notes, just the whole historical presentation. And one of the releases they put out, which was a bit left field at the time, Darker Than Blue, Soul from Jam Down. which I've never had this on vinyl, but it is Jamaican covers of classics US soul tunes. So you got The Chosen Few doing Collie Stuff, which is based on Kool and the Gang's Funky Stuff. Carl Bradney doing Wars Slipping into Darkness. Ken Booth doing just a smoldering rendition of Syl Johnson's Is It Because I'm Black? And for me, the kicker is Lloyd Charmer's just goosebump-inducing version of Curtis Mayfield's Darker Than Blue, the title track. So that was a classic compilation that came out almost 15 years ago. And what's just come out is dubbed from Jam Down, Darker Than Blue, which is kind of a tribute album. This is by a German instrumental group called the Senior All-Stars. Comes on limited edition vinyl with 8 tracks. They've included a CD with 13 tracks on here. If I can find it, there's the CD. And just very nice tribute. Very solid bass and drum, bit of funk they get into in tribute to the original versions. Kind of tasteful dub flourishes, a bit of melodica in there. Just a very nice release here. I just sort of don't usually go for that new dub kind of stuff, but having been a fan of the original compilation, I couldn't pass that one up. Studio One Disco Mix, Soul Jazz Records. There's a whole series of these things, as you can probably tell. Studio One funk and roots and all that stuff. It's 2 LPs. I've had this on CD for years. It's one of those ones that you don't see on vinyl too much, so I thought I'd snag it while it was out there. It says it comes with a download code, which I didn't get. But just killer roots, kind of late 70s. This is when Clement Dodd, the founder of Studio One, his tunes that he had laid down in the 60s, the rhythm tracks were all being versioned over again by other producers through the 70s and into the 80s. And he kind of decided to fight back and do new versions of his own rhythms with new artists and in the heavier kind of roots style of the time. So you got Lloyd and Devon, Push Push, Judah Iskender Tafari, Rastafari Tell You, Jackie Matu, Night in Ethiopia on the Sada Masagana rhythm track, Willie Williams, Armageddon Time, I talked about earlier, that's on here. What else? Winston Francis, Going to Zion, just killer tunes, every single one of them. I got one 12-inch single, Africa is Calling, Horace Martin. It's a reissue on Roots Recycler. Kind of not a really well-known name, but one of those kind of 80s singers. Pretty much everything I've heard by him is just killer. And last up, there is, I've talked a bit about the Hot Milk reissue label that is out of the UK. They haven't been around that long, maybe a couple of years, but they're starting to put out a really pretty solid catalog of releases, kind of carrying on the tradition of labels like Blood and Fire. Just very high quality reissues. They've kind of been CD focused initially, but they're starting to move more into vinyl. And one of their latest releases is called 12 Tribe of Israel. It's by Mr. Spalding. Now, Mr. Spalding is not exactly a household name, even in reggae circles. You'd have to be pretty deep into the world of collecting original 7-inch and 12-inch LPs, just the original records to know his name. I never even heard of him, to be honest with you, and I've been into reggae for years and years. But his real name is Renford Ferguson, which, Mr. Ferguson, if you're watching this, big up to you, job blessing every time. Much respect for your music. But they initially put out a CD version, and the CD is quite different from the vinyl. First CD, you get basically the original LP. The original LP was recorded in 1983, and there's just very detailed liner notes in here. Just give you a little glimpse here. That's him there. Very detailed liner notes. The first CD is basically this album, which was his first LP that came out in 1983. Very small quantities, just heavy, deep roots, dance hall. Just killer sounds. And there was a smattering of singles as well. There was a bit of confusion because they kept spelling his name differently. And actually the name Mr. Spalding was from a song. There's a song by that name, which kind of became his signature tune in the dance hall. It was from a lyric that Brigadier Jerry, the great dance hall DJ, came up with. And it got such a response with the crowds that people started referring to him as Mr. Spalding. And one day, Brigadier Jerry's sister, Sister Nancy, you might know of her from classic songs like 1-2, Bam Bam, she said, well, why don't you just call yourself that? So that's what he did. And, peppered some other songs with kind of self-referential references to his name. And just a really incredible story. I can't go into too much detail here, but the liner notes just tell the story about, this record coming out and just kind of the runnings of the time, not much money coming in, the usual lack of promotion, stuff like that. In 1984, he was stabbed in the back, 2 inches from his lungs, nearly died. He'd spent 2 hours in the waiting room in the hospital and got stitched up without anesthetic. Took a long time to recover from that. I guess the sights he saw in the hospital were so horrific he didn't want to go back, so he opted to pull his own stitches out. Like I said, took a long time to recover from that, was kind of at loose ends, changes in producers and things like that. And had a lot of opportunities to go down a kind of a dark path, but he opted instead to go to the US, traveled around, finally ended up in London, settled down, raised a family there, and things sort of turned out okay. And now his music has come out again, and he's had more attention than ever before, and let's hope things turn out very well for him, because it's killer music and it deserves more attention. And this release is just a labor of love, which there's kind of a backstory to how this release came to be as well. There was a fan in Sweden, Joachim Kalsidis, I think is his name. I know of him, I don't know him personally, but he's kind of a reggae scholar, collector. He kind of got the ball going on this reissue and then passed it on to Hot Milk Records to take it to the next level. And they have just made a labor of love out of this. I don't know if you can see, but even the CD label is made to look like kind of the bumpy texture of an old Jamaican 7-inch single, which that's kind of what they look like. And then, of course, like the very informative liner notes. Sound quality is great. So they put out the CD first. The CD is, disc 1 is basically the original album plus some 12-inch singles. And disc 2 has got some later singles, goes kind of through the 80s up to about 1990 or so, and gets into the various dance hall styles, into the digital, ending up kind of in the digital age. And the CD came out first, and then a little bit later the vinyl issue came out, which is basically a straight reproduction of the original LP with a couple of dub versions added, and just a crucial release. It's already making some people's top 5 reggae reissues of the year, and I can see it will figure prominently in mine. So that's about all I've got for you today. Check out the blog page. I've written a bit more extensively about a couple of the items I've shown on here, and there's just been throwing up a few other posts as well. So I will have a new update for you guys very soon. I hope everybody's doing well in the VC. Peace. Cheers, guys. Take care.